they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin and welcome back for my 2021 goal planner setup. For planning my goals next year, I'm going to be using an Archer and Olive A5 Night Sky journal. While my setup for my everyday 2021 bullet journal was a bit more involved, this one's a lot more minimalistic, and I'm going to be using only a couple of different materials. As always, links to any of the equipment I use in today's setup can be found in the description box below, but without further ado, let's get to planning. As I mentioned, this bullet journal is going to be my goal planner for next year. So it won't have anything like a year at a glance or a future log or anything like that, but instead what it's going to have are reference materials for my goal setting, things to help keep me motivated to work on my goals, some pages dedicated to determining what my goals actually are, and then of course once I have my goals, I'm going to need some action plans. Although I'm not setting up any action plans in this setup, because I haven't quite determined what my goals are going to be yet, the other pages I mentioned I will be setting up. The first thing I'm starting with though, that you can see here, is a quote page. Just like in my everyday bullet journal setup, I've decided that I really like starting the first page of a new journal with a quote. The one that I've got for this page is "Inactivity breeds inactivity. Action breeds action." I'm not too sure where I got this from, or if I've seen it somewhere before. It's just something that I've found myself saying quite a lot recently, and I thought it was perfect to go into my goal planner. As you can see, I'm using simple stretched cursive lettering, as well as some all caps. This lettering style is something that I repeat throughout the other pages, just to make everything look cohesive. The quote page took me about 3 minutes to set up, and then it was onto a goal reference material spread. On this one, I want to have some reference materials that I can use anytime I'm going to do some goal setting. So tips and tricks that I've learnt from various places, and in particular how to make habits, how to break habits, and the steps for setting SMART goals. Although I'm not necessarily a big believer in SMART goals, I did still want to have that information for reference in my journal. While the other pages of this setup I'm not going to be populating in today's video, they're either the kind of things that get populated over a longer span of time, and are probably a little more personal than I need to put on the internet. The right hand side of this reference page in particular I did want to fill out. This spread in total took a little under 20 minutes, so the longest spread for the setup I have today, just because there was a lot more to write. I mentioned before that I'm using a combination of all caps lettering and stretched out cursive for this setup. You can see with the headers in particular, what I first did was go in with a Tombow in a light grey colour, N95, to write in the heading in all caps, and then over the top of this with a fine point Muji pen, 0.38, I wrote in the same title with the stretched cursive. This is a pretty classic combination when it comes to heading design, but I think it looks really nice together and it's still really easy to do. For the rest of the writing I have on this page, I'm just using the S size Pitt Artist Pen in black. So what I've got here is some information on how to make habit making and habit breaking more successful. The points I have for that one are from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And then at the bottom I've just got those little descriptors of what the S, M, A, R and T in SMART goals stands for. In terms of the page on the left, or the space that I have for writing goal setting tips, I have a couple of ideas of what I want to include on here, but I'm probably going to do a little bit more research first. With that said, if you guys have any tips for setting goals, or any questions about goal setting, please do leave them in the comments. We are a super resourceful and inquisitive community, so I always love hearing from you guys. Even if I don't have the answer to your question, somebody else might, so it's always worth asking. With this reference spread done, it's then over the page and onto the next one. While the one I just set up was more about how to set goals, this next one is a space for me to record some goal traps or common mistakes in setting and pursuing goals, and then also a page to write out some ideas for getting myself back on track if I ever fall off on the work I'm doing or get slack with the goals that I'm working on. As these pages are the kind of thing that I'm going to be filling in over the life of this journal, all I really needed to do for their setup was write in the titles. So in terms of timing, from first touch of the pen to final erasings, this one came in at a little under 3 minutes. I will say that time has certainly increased because I was being careful, but also because I find the Muji pen takes a little longer to dry than some of the other pens I use. The pages I've set up so far are mainly for reference, whereas the rest of the pages I'm setting up are more specifically targeted towards setting my goals for 2021. To denote this transition, I figured I needed some kind of a title page, so that's what I'm making here. For this one I'm still keeping it simple, just writing 2021 in the center of the page, but instead of going in with the Tombow first, I'm using the Muji to write out 2021 in letters, and then behind this I'm putting the numbers 2021. So it still fits in with that overall cohesive theme I'm going for, but it's just a little bit different. After this title page, it's then onto the stuff that's actually going to help me set my goals. The first two sections we have, which are on the right page here, are a section for me to write down any kind of goal ideas I have, so do a bit of a brainstorm of the things that I think I might want to have as goals for next year, and then at the bottom I have a section to write things that light me up. What are the kind of things that I'm passionate about, or get excited about, or really enjoy? If you've seen my Power Sheets videos before, these may seem a little familiar. They are both sections in the Power Sheets prep. Pretty much all of the sections that I have in this setup to help me set my goals are inspired by either the Power Sheets, the Life Map Daily, or other things that I've seen on the internet. So it's kind of an amalgamation of all of these different styles of goal setting. That last spread took about 3 minutes to set up, while this one was a bit closer to 4. On this spread I have 5 sections, the first of which is the anti-vision. This is essentially a space to write out what the worst possible version of me looks like. So what if instead of working on my goals, I actively worked against them? I lived my worst possible life, didn't do any kind of self-betterment, that kind of stuff. Really, the purpose of this section is to help you identify what you do want by outlining what you certainly don't want. Which brings us to the next section, Ideal Me. This is essentially the opposite of the anti-vision. So what would life look like if I was living my best life, if I had improved in all of the areas I wanted to improve in? That kind of stuff. The section after this I've titled I Value, so rather than calling it My Values, because I more just want this section to be a brainstorm of the things that I think are important. The last two sections on this page I've called More Please and No Thanks. And this is to write down the things I want more of in my life and the things I want less of. For instance, more fun, less stress. Up next we have a level 10 life spread, which took 9 minutes to set up. If you haven't heard of the level 10 life before, this comes from Hal Elrod's book The Miracle Morning, where he talks about the idea that we all want to be living our level 10 life. So the best of the best in all the different categories of life. Although in his book there are 10 different categories to rate your life on, for the sake of fitting it nicely onto this page and having a nice simple square tracker to draw up, I've instead gone with 8. So the categories I've gone with here are physical, mental, personal development, home, finances, work, partner, and social. I believe the categories I'm missing, compared to the original level 10 life, are giving and contribution, and spirituality. I think if I was actually going to have 10 categories, I'd probably have a separate category for family, rather than including it with social, and I'd probably separate out my teaching work from my YouTube work. A thing that I think is nice about making my own goal planner for next year is that I don't have to use predetermined categories. I can select categories that suit me and the things that I want to focus on. As I said before, I'm using a square tracker for my level 10 life, so I'm just separating this square out into 8 triangles, so each triangle being for one of my categories, and then when I come to give myself a rating out of 10, I'll just fill in that number of rows or columns from the middle towards the outside. Typically when I do my ratings in each category, I kind of just base it on a gut feeling, but this time around I'm hoping that I can find some prompts for my different categories to kind of give me a more reasonable rating. Otherwise I find myself to be a bit of a harsh marker, and I end up with quite a few low numbers. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm working towards my goals, I might hit a milestone or achieve something that isn't actually directly related to the goals that I'm working on. I always find this a bummer because I feel like I really should record the achievement somewhere, and that's what this page here on the left is for. I'm calling this one my Eclectic Milestones page. So it's a place to write down any milestone that I reach or any kind of achievement that isn't specifically related to the goals I'm focusing on. I'm hoping that by having it here, I'll be more motivated to work on things that aren't necessarily my focus at that point in time. on the other side of the spread, I have a place to write down, once I figure out what they are, my main goal and 2 mini goals for the first quarter of 2021. This idea of having 1 main goal and 2 mini goals came from the life map, and I found it to be more beneficial for me to focus on just 3 things rather than 8 or 12 or more. That's another thing I like about making my own goal planner for the year coming. Being able to take these little snippets of things that worked from all these different styles of goal planning that I've tried, and then make my own Frankenstein's monster version. I'd love to know though, how are you guys doing your goal planning for next year? Is it part of your regular bullet journal? Do you have a separate goal planner? Or something else entirely? Please do let me know in the comments below if you wanted to share. Then it was time to put my name in my planner. For this one I used a Papermate liquid flare pen, mainly because I love the quality of the black ink and I really love how smooth it writes. And I also added in some little star decorations, really just because I couldn't resist. At this point I was ready to film my final flip through, but then my alarm went off and my footage stopped recording and I got a little bit flustered. And then, just like you saw in the intro, tragedy struck. I did try and go over the smearing a couple of times with my white gel pen, but I think I'm gonna need to give it a few more layers to get it to a place I'm happy with. And for the final flip through we have my nameplate page, simple quote page, some reference pages for goal setting, a space to write down any goal traps that I might fall into and how to get back on track. And then we're into the stuff that's for 2021 specifically. So a space to write down any goal ideas I might have, a space to write down all of the things that really light me up, a space to write my anti-vision or things that I do not want to happen, a space to brainstorm what an ideal me would look like, a place to write down things that I value, things that I want more of and less of, a spread dedicated to my level 10 life, so rating each of these categories out of 10, and then a space to write down why I've given it that rating, a space to write down any milestones that I have this year that aren't specifically goal related, and then once I figure them out, a space to write down my goals for the first quarter. A much more simple layout than my 2021 everyday bullet journal, but to make sure I'm making the most amount of progress on my goals possible, I think that's going to be a good thing. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this one too. Thank you for watching, team. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you wanted to see more from me, feel free to go check out one of my other videos. Until next time, bye!